歡迎各位團體或。
I would like to welcome the deputations and individuals for attending our meeting to give us your views on waiting time for public rental housing. Now, this is the second session because we have 68 deputations or individuals. And we started 10 minutes late. This is because we didn't have sufficient time for the first item. So I hope you can bear with us. Each of you will be given 3 minutes to speak. Please understand that for your views, both in writing and verbally, they will not be protected by the LC Powers and Privileges Ordinance. Attending our meetings, and for those in the public gallery, you have a note for you in relation to the security measures, and it has been attached to the letter sent to you by the Secretariat. There's also a copy tabled before you. For those in the public gallery, if you're interested, please ask for a copy from the security staff. And members, before you, you have the mic, you have the earpiece, channel 0 for floor, channel 1 for Cantonese, channel 2 for English, and channel 3 for 普通话. Our arrangement is that we will give the floor to you to speak. Each of you will be given 3 minutes. After you've spoken, I will invite the administration to give a brief overall reply. And then I will invite electrical members who are in attendance to ask questions.
Attending the meeting today are Ms. Agnes Wong, Deputy Secretary for Transport and Housing, Mr. Anson Lai, Assistant Director, Strategic Planning, Housing Department, and Mrs. Rosa Ho, Assistant Director, Housing Subsidies, Housing Department. Welcome the 3 government officials. Now let's hand over the floor to the deputations and individuals. The first one is the Concerned Ethnic Minorities Housing Issue Alliance, Mr. Rashad Minhards. Good morning. I'm speaking on behalf of ethnic minorities living in葵涌. We have conducted a survey on housing and waiting time, and very often ethnic minorities have bumped into a lot of difficulties in Hong Kong because their family size is usually larger and they need larger living space. And when they apply for public housing, they are forced to choose a district which is not that favorable. Now, if you look at the waiting list, you will see, or the PRH allocation, there are less large units in the urban districts, so ethnic minorities have to live in the new territories. In speaking to the media, the housing department said the average waiting time is 3 years, but for us ethnic minorities, we have to wait 5, 6 years or even more. It has nothing to do with whether they would like to live in the urban districts or not. Generally, they have to wait longer. Also, regarding the living space, the ethnic minorities usually have a larger family size, but then housing department is reducing the size of living space for people. So it seems that it's not encouraging the entire family to live together, and it goes against the Chinese traditional values of living together with their elderly parents. The Hong Kong families usually have a smaller size, but ethnic minorities have a larger family size. So I hope that the housing department will not reduce the number of large size units. Please provide more flats for larger size families. Well, we can take a look at the statistics. And we can see that a larger household has to wait longer. Please pay attention to that. Next one is Concern Group on Kwun Tong SDUs, Ms. Lin Xiu-ping. I'm from the Concern Group on Kwun Tong SDUs. I want to make 5 points today. First is reintroduce rent control. Rent takes up half of our income, and we had hard time making ends meet. We don't want to switch on the air conditioning during summer, and our kids can't participate in extracurricular activities. Now, protecting the rights of the tenants. We are scared that the rents may be increased anytime, and we can't afford the rent. Third, legalizing the SDUs in industrial buildings. SDUs of 50 square feet can cost $2,900 in rental. There is just a bed and a stove, and whenever we cook, it's like a sauna in that room. Fourth, is allowing a longer time for relocation. Fifth, implement the 3-year average waiting time. For those who have to wait longer than 3 years, please provide rent subsidy to them on a monthly basis. Thank you. Next. A Kaifeng group of PRH applicants in Kwun Tong. Ms. Chen Han Chang, rather. Good morning. 3 flat offers. That's what we're normally given. In the first 2 offers, we are given a flat on the top floor, over 20 years old, without a lift. And we have to climb the stairs to the very top floor. So that should be considered as express flat units to be allocated to those who are in great need, to the grassroots. Also, for no reason at all, the housing department sent us a letter granting or offering us a special PRH unit where someone has died within. So we found we are very helpless. Yes, thank you very much. That's all you want to say? Yes. Some groups discussed about rent control and the right for lease or rental. I would like to add that on the 24th of July, the housing panel, 24th of July, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., we will be holding a public hearing on that subject. So if you want to give your views on rent control, please register with the Secretariat to come on the 24th of July to give your views. Next. Mr. So from an alliance of grassroots housing. Housing department is not listening to views on the real needs of tenants. You are just looking at the figures, using the minimal resources to come up with the highest figures. You gave a blind eye to our plight. For those applicants who are VP or to 6B households, and many of us actually have one person as a breadwinner supporting the entire family. For myself, I earn $20,000 a month, and divided by 5 people, everyone gets $130 a day, and that excludes spending on daily necessities and rental. And we are made to wait for the longest time for a PRH unit. Should we put up with this situation any longer? And because of the HD's planning, we are having to wait for double the time the other applicants. We're talking about the actual waiting time. Well, some residents get a unit in 3 to 5 years' time, 3-person households. But for us, 4-person households, at least they have to wait at least 7 years to get a unit, double the time for other applicants. Some even have to wait for as long as 8 years. Have you considered that when you do your planning? The housing department has all the figures every year. 1P, 2P, 3P, 4P, 5P households, the number of applicants. You have all the figures with you. So you are just planning that overall people can get a flat in 5 years, but then some applicants have to wait for 8 years. As to your hotline, nobody answered that hotline. And also I browsed through the waiting time on the website. Now the waiting time is 119,000 applications, general applicants. Now I am on the waiting list of 121,700. Well, on the website the figure is 190,400. So there is a difference of some 20,000 people. So how come that there is this difference? Now for 4P household units, you are providing 1,000 units every year only. And in the next year, in 2017, there will be more larger size units, around 4,000 units. But then, sorry, your time's up. A concern group, Mr. Lai, our concern group comes up, is formed by people who are considered as under occupation households. The government says that it will recover some under occupation households and allocate them to other applicants. But then the government has covered up a lot of problematic figures. One of it is has to do with under occupation policy. It has been tightening up the policy all the time, and for recovered units, they were allocated to 1P and 2P household applicants. We've met with the assistant director, and he said and admitted that they are going to tighten up the policy, and they will recover 1,000 units to relocate the under occupation households. This is the most strange policy. The people who are going to be affected are rising when so many people are waiting for a PRH unit and they hope to get a flat. But then the next moment they're going to be affected by this under occupation policy. The policy is being tightened up, and if you've got a slight drop in the number of people in your household, you will be evicted from your under occupation unit. So this is a policy drawn up by the HD, and actually the government is taking the lead to create social divide to cover up the fact that he doesn't want to build more PRH. If the government is tightening as policy and standards, and people have to be relocated. Now, the vacated unit or the recovered unit may be allocated to first the person who may not take it up, and then the second person who may not take it up, and then the government is recreating the illusion that the many flats are being offered. So many PRH units are facing pressure on relocation, and through such an exercise, the government can recover more flats and come up with better statistics. Now, if you are trying to pump up the figures through the recovery of units, then you are trying to hide the fact that you are not increasing the number of PRH as a whole. This is a +1, -1 concept. You try to recover flats from under occupation households, and then you are relocating them to smaller units. You are, in fact, affecting the chance of the singletons in getting a unit. Now, there is a quota of 2,000 for singletons. Why don't you work around that and give more flats to the singletons? So I urge that the government should stop its policy of relocating the under-occupation households, and in the long term, the government should increase the number of PHR to address the housing needs and not to force people to relocate to other units. Ms. Chang, from another concern group. Thank you, Chairman. I want to raise 2 points. First, a lot of people are waiting for PRH units. But how come that the government is relaxing its new arrival policy and many new arrivals are being in Hong Kong? I'm not targeting the new arrivals, I'm targeting the policy. So has the government considered whether these new arrivals can adjust to the life in Hong Kong? They may have to need the families to support them, and then they may become live in overcrowded households, and they may have to live in SDUs too. So I sympathize with them, and they may have to apply for CSSA too, and they would also apply for PRH. So all these we can understand. And some people, including university students, are also applying for a PRH. So if we want to ease the pressure on the waiting list for PRH, we must help, especially the new arrivals, and see whether they really need a PRH unit. They may need assistance on other family problems. Many NGOs and social enterprises are helping the SDU tenants and single-parent families. So the problem may not be addressed by merely having a PRH unit. So the housing department should prudently tread with this policy on PRH, and those who don't really need a PRH should be helped in other ways. They should be referred for assistance in social enterprises and NGOs. I think the housing is part of the population policy, but then the government seems to be passing the responsibility on the HD, and the HD doesn't have enough houses to house all people and the residents have to bear the brunt of the pressure. For example, the under-occupation policy, and in fact, through that policy, the HD is forcing people out of their units, and then for a vacated unit that has to be renovated, and that involves costs, and a domestic relocation allowance has to be given, and then during the vacancy period no rental can be recovered, and the under occupation households are forced to live in 1P unit, and then will delay the applicants who are the 1P applicants who are on the waiting list for getting a unit. I would like to talk about young people living as a right, and young people have a great problem in getting a house. On the waiting list, there are some 120,000 on the singleton elderly waiting list, and those under 30, 82,000 people. So without a house, how can young people continue to live in Hong Kong? The singletons are on the non-elderly singleton waiting list. There are a number of problems with that system. First, it is not a first-come, first-served basis. The older you get, the higher you are on the list, and also the scores differ from year to year. 165 this year, 170 next year. So this is changing all the time. So this is most unfavorable to young people. Now the quota every year is only 2,000. So how can that satisfy the 120,000 on the waiting list? And also, the government is discriminating against the non-elderly singleton applicants. How come that there are two queues for them, a separate queue for them? For the general applicants, there is a promise of 3-year waiting time, but for the other queue, no. They said that the number of applicants is exaggerated, and the young people can wait till they get married. Now, how come that they are made to wait longer? I need housing right now too. So why is it that getting a PRH unit has to do with whether you get married or not? And also, there are different screening mechanisms to screen out certain people. So we have to be very patient, and we have to wait patiently for more than 10 years to get a PRH unit. Next is about the under-occupation policy. This is a draconian policy. And of course, there may be changes in the family size as time goes by. And if you are under occupation household, you are evicted, and you can't live happily in your flat. Now, university students upon graduation have to provide for their families and repay for the grants and loans, and they have difficulties in applying for a PRH. I think they have a difficult time. They are just like stepping on a minefield. And sorry, your time's up. Deputations. First, when I said that you have to stop, you should stop speaking. Second, you shouldn't, during an official electrical meeting, use uncivilized language. And I hope that deputations are going to speak afterwards. Please respect yourself, and please respect the Legislative Council. Please respect the community, and don't use uncivilized language in your remarks.
Next, inhumane housing policy victim, Chun Chun. The government has the responsibility to provide basic facilities and commodities for the people. For example, food, water, etc. If this is speculated on, this will lead to instability in society. This is the rights of the citizens, and this should not be a commodity for speculation. For example, the MTR and the tunnels, they should not be commodities of speculation. Actually, there are enough housing units in Hong Kong, no matter in the private or public sector. Actually, there are many vacant flats. It's because people use them to as investment, just speculate on them. So the eligibility criteria for PLH should be relaxed. There are many people waiting for PLH. And now there are many victims who are who become speculations victims. So for some households who are already living in PLH, if a member of the family dies, then they will become a UO household and they are evicted. This is most unfair. This is not a solution for PLH shortage. Now the situation is different from the old times, and many PLH tenants are forced to lead an unstable life. As for public housing, we mean both PLH and HOS, and the HA refuses to disclose the ratio between the two, so it can make use of the excuse of land shortage to build less PLH. And we think that 20% of the land in Hong Kong should be used for private housing and 80% should be used for public housing. And also the ratio between PLH and HOS should be disclosed. To help those who are on a waiting list, rental policy should be implemented, and taxes should be imposed on vacant units. And HOS price should be pegged to the cost of the HOS, not the market price. And HOS flats can only be sold back to the HA. It should not become a commodity for speculation. Time's up. Next. Tenant group that can never live safely. Well, we think that the government and the CE are all lying. Increasing housing production is the solution for housing problem. But the government is now putting the cart before the horse and then always moves the goalpost, and it has been fabricating figures. On the surface, it seems that there are more housing units. However, now is trying to identify more so-called UO households, and this would drive a wedge between different PLH tenants. But you are not kicking the UO households out of PLH. You have to give them another unit. So it's the same. So you are not increasing the provision of PLH units, and you would have to earmark smaller units for the UO units, and this UO households have to fight with those singleton applicants in the waiting line. The public housing policy has been retrograding, and now the size for tenants or size of flats for tenants are getting smaller and smaller, and when it's compared in the 90s, it's even worse. Now, for those who have been recently housed in PLH, they are the victims of this new policy. And when a household gets richer, it would be evicted by the HA. And if some members of the household die, they will become a UO household and is evicted again. And the CE always lies. It's now ruining other people's homes. And it says that if the land is not developed, and there will be no housing supply in the future. However, when people are housed in these new PLH units, when there's a change in their household members, then they would have to be evicted. There is a shortage in housing supply is because of the government's policy, and the UO household policy is a draconian policy. We hope that the government would not do this again. It has to produce more housing units so that the waiting time can be reduced. Next, Ms. Anna Chang. Thank you, Chairman. I would like to make 3 points today. First of all, we see this new this government paper analysis of housing situation of waiting list applicants, and he says that it is the government's policy objective to provide PLH to low-income families who cannot afford private rental accommodation. Now, in the private rental market, if I make only $12,000 a month, I really cannot afford to rent a unit in the private market. Have you read the news? Do you know the latest rental level in the market? Well, I make $12,000 a month, and for a two-person unit in the private market, you have to pay at least $8,000. And if you pay $3,000, you can only rent a very basic SDU. So PLH is not only needed by low-income families. Actually, it should be the basic housing for Hong Kong people. So why are you turning a blind eye to this livelihood problem? And for paragraph 25, you talk about UO households. You are making use of this policy to solve the housing shortage problem. But this is a poor logic. The HA now tries to recover 3 to 4p household units, and then it will give the so-called UO household a one-person unit. So under this logic, yes, that's +1 and -1. So how about the supply of one-person units? This does not help to solve the problem. Now the UO households are moved to smaller units. You are not solving the problem. You should produce more housing units. That is to solve the whole problem. Now you are victimizing this small group of people. So after you are housed, are you safe? Can you lead a safe and happy life? No. Because the HA will come up with all sorts of excuses to make your life difficult. Now you may be housed in a PLH unit, and if you get richer, then you will be evicted. And if there's a change in the household members, then you will become a UO household. So the HA has come up with a lot of excuses to give us a bad image. I would like to say a few phrases more. No, time's up, so I have to be fair to everyone. Everyone is given 3 minutes. Next, Mr. SIU Kin-man. Well, when we look at the waiting list, actually, each month 5,000 units will be kept for transfer. Why is there such a large number of units for this purpose? So 1,000 of these units are reserved for your households, and some of them are reserved for under occupation households, and some of them are reserved for transfer households. So for the present housing policy, there are many new UO households each year. And when we look at the Census and Statistics Department's data, and actually the HA has also responded to this, in fact, the housing policy should be offering flats to applicants on the waiting list, and the units should not be kept for transfer or any other purpose, and existing tenants should not be affected. This is unfair to the sitting tenants, and also this will affect the applicants on the waiting list. Now, if you are keeping so many units for other purposes, for example, for transfer or for accommodating your households, then this will affect the people in the waiting list. This includes all sorts of units, 1P unit, 2P units. All these are affected by the UO household policy, and people will have to wait longer before they can be housed. Now, when we look at the PLH design, actually the governments can build different types of PLH. For example, at Yun Chau Estate, Yun Yat building, if you look at the design, you can see that they are all 1P units. And for 2-bedroom units, there is a shortage in supply. Can the government target this problem? When they design the blocks, more appropriate units should be built. And when the HA builds the housing estates, it should look at the needs of households, and units should be built bigger. If 7 square meters is used as a standard for building PLH units, it's actually very small for many tenants. So when the HA designs the units, it has to think more for the tenants. Time's up. Next, Kui Chung Estate Tenants Interest Concern Group, Mr. Lai Ming Lai. As for the waiting list, we have been talking about it for a long time, and now there are more than 240,000 people on the waiting list. And ever since 2005, the government has implemented a quota and points system, and 2,000 units are reserved for non-elderly one-person applicants, and half of them are kept for other purposes. For example, other tenants with housing problems. So I would like to ask the chairman and the government. Now, for those 130,000 people, when can all of them be housed? Well, just now we were talking about the waiting list. And for the young people living in PLH now, they are facing this new policy. They are forced to go into the private market, and they have to face a lot of problems. The government, on one hand, asks them to take care of their parents or elderly at home. However, on the other hand, the government is forcing the young people to leave the PLH units wherein they are living. So the government is contradicting itself. And if a young person is to leave his PLH unit, where can he go? And he must go to the private market to rent a room. However, in Hong Kong, there is no rental control. So the young people have to face rental increase and forced eviction all the time. So we think that the non-elderly one-person applicants QPS should be abolished, because this is discriminating against young people. And also HOS should not be packed with the market. HOS should only be provided for the needy, and if you want to sell an HOS flat, you have to sell it back to the HA. HA and HS should stop turning their units into commodities. And also a rental control policy should be implemented so that tenants can be better protected. Thank you. Next,土瓜灣grassroots families units. Ms. Chen Pei-shan. Thank you. We have a lot of gaifangs who have been on the waiting list for more than 7 years, and they still do not get an offer. But actually, they have met the eligibility criteria already. So I would like to make the following 3 points. First, for the PLH unit allocation survey, we found that it was very confusing. When we look at the relevance form, it said that at least half of the household members should have lived in Hong Kong for 7 years, and all the household members should be living in Hong Kong. And for those under 18, they should be born in Hong Kong, and they should be Hong Kong permanent residents. Then it will be regarded. He will be regarded as complying with the residence requirements. So we would like to ask a question. If there is a 2P household and the applicant has not lived in Hong Kong for 7 years, but there's this under 18 child who was born in Hong Kong and has been living in Hong Kong for 7 years, so half of the household members have met the requirement. So do they have to meet the other residence requirement? That is, the other member of the family will have to live in Hong Kong for 7 years. We have asked the HD, and the answer is that the applicants must have lived in Hong Kong for 7 years. However, we see many applicants with the same background. However, the applicant has not fulfilled the residence requirements, and he's already offered a unit. So we feel very confused. And second, about the first flat offer. Now, many applicants are not satisfied with the first offer. For example, it's a new arrival from the mainland and all the family members live in Kowloon. The children are studying in Kowloon, and then the HA offers them a flat in the islands. Of course, they do not want to move there. So we hope that the HA can do better. That is when it comes to district choices. The 4 districts should be increased to 5 districts. Then it would be easier for the applicants to accept the offer. Next, SIU Concern Group. Ms. Man, please take your board away. I cannot see you. Well, it seems that there's only one member here. Well, it's not for you to ask such questions. You are here to tell us what you feel. I think the DAB is very concerned about people's livelihood. Ms. Man, which member is to attend the meeting is not under my control. Now, we'll have to start counting your time. Please tell us what you want to say. Yes, I am saying what I want to say. I seldom come to hearings like this. I want to speak out. The pro-establishment camp members should be sitting here because they should hear our voice. Well, when you ask this question, nobody can answer you. I'm just expressing my views. Nobody can answer my question. Now, please say what you come here to say.
I would like to get a PRH unit. I am asking for a 4P household unit. I've been waiting for a few years. The HA promises to ask us to wait for 3 years. What about the rough idea? If 3 years can't, then what about 6 years? I think it's better to be more specific about the time that we need to wait. Otherwise, we'll just regard the target as a rigging of the figure. We don't know how to arrive at such a AWT. Now, for us to rent a unit, we need to know about the time needed. For the land, supposedly for PRH, you sell it for private housing. The land you sell would only give you revenue, which is inadequate for PRH housing. Only the rich will stand to gain. And then now you have to dip into the pockets of the government to find money to subsidize the poor. So it's a matter of collusion between the rich and the government. And what about the civil service quarters? I think we have over 1,000 vacant units. They are all big units. They are. What about temporarily allowing the 4P households who have been on waiting list for 4 or 5 years to live in such quarters? Would you rather leave them vacant and just allow the mice to move in instead? That's all I want to say. Next, Ms. Wong So-man from the Wan Chai Housing Group. You have heard a lot. Maybe you get bored. I'm not sure if the administration and the members can feel for themselves how bad it is. Probably you haven't got any personal experience. I still have to tell you about the stories about the plight. There is this case, waiting for 5 years, 4P household, with only the father making a living. They can barely pay for the rent while we're waiting for a unit, and they don't know for how much longer they have to wait, and they have to worry about the increase in the rental by the landlord. I don't know whether any of you are a landlord. They are so worried that they have suffered a mental breakdown, and they have to see a psychiatrist. They don't know whether they can afford the rental. And again, this is doing great harm to them. They don't know where to go because even if they cannot afford the rent, they have nowhere to go. They don't know where to turn to, who to turn to, and they have become hopeless. They don't know why they have come to Hong Kong. For this father, he thinks that he is ashamed of himself. And on the face of it, he may still be laughing, having all smiles on his face, but he's under a lot of pressure. He told me that twice he considered going up to the rooftop and jump to his death, and then the housing department will house his family, the rest of his family, on compassionate ground. His daughter is too young, and so his younger daughter cannot yet join him in Hong Kong. So please understand this matter. You are also having a job, but you know that what you do as your in your job will affect the livelihood of many people. For the rich, properties are but a toy for them to play with, something that they speculate in and to make money. But for the grassroots, if they don't have a roof over their head, they can't even survive. So please be more dedicated to your work. Your policies will affect a few millions of people in Hong Kong. I still have time, so let me refer to one other case. There's this new arrival. She's so naive, thinking that upon arrival in Hong Kong, as she has a lot of faith in Hong Kong, probably she has always had a lot of hope in the one-party rule in CCP. So she really thinks that she will get a PRH unit in 3 years' time. She spends time living with the mother-in-law, but then because of the conflict, they almost have a fight. She can no longer take it, and then she moves out, and yet she has to suffer from huge economic pressure. Your time is up. Next, Madam Ho, Chen Han Housing Group. Yes, please start. Good morning. Yes, please start. I'm applying for a unit from the housing department. I've been waiting for 3 years. I would like to say to the landlord that I am leaving in a month's time, because I've been given an offer, but then the offer has been delayed, and then my landlord has already offered my place to another person, so I'm really in huge hardship. Have you finished? No, not yet. I have to pause and think. But you only have 3 minutes for you to think and speak. I still have to think about it, but my time isn't up. So the gentleman next to you can help. What about C.Y. Leung? Did he say that we can get a home in 3 years' time? But then it's almost 4 years now that I've been on the waiting list. If my landlord kicks me out, then I've nowhere to go. The HA has delayed the allocation. So where should I go? The postponement is as many as 6 months. I live in Shaoqi Wan. Now I am housed in Changsha Wan. I don't even know how to go to a market to do my shopping. I don't know my way. And then Professor Chen Leung said that maybe I could be offered a transfer. But then it seems that the matter has been dropped and nothing has come out of it. I would like to ask the housing department to build more units so that the citizens can get a unit more easily. Do you understand how much we are suffering from? I think CY Leung is a liar. He's deceiving us. Do you agree? Because he doesn't honor his promise. 3 years to get housed, but it's been 6 or 7 years now. Your time is up. Next, Mr. Lam Yong K, Eastern District Housing Group. The dollar sign is prevailing in the housing policy portfolio. Now it appears that housing has become a commodity. I think the government has forgotten that housing is a basic need. Now 250,000 people are on the waiting list, so it is only reasonable to produce more public housing. The government is not going to contract out the construction. Now, the government always blames it on lack of land and is exaggerating the case. I think the government is trying to use this as an excuse to damage the homes of people living in the urban area or in the NT Northeast. As a result, the grassroots are cornered. There is no way out. I think the government just wants to make money. The government is not trying to address the basic housing needs. We have a golf course. It serves the interests of 2,000 members only. The government would not want to take it away for the purpose of building housing. We haven't got any site in the urban area for public housing. All the sites are for luxury flats for the purpose of making a profit. You can't solve the problem of housing. Now housing has become a commodity. Either you have to live in a subdivided unit or you queue up for a PRH unit. And that's why the waiting list is getting longer and longer. We haven't got rent control now. And then by making housing as a commodity, there is a big problem. I think the government is duty bound to address the housing problem so that the grassroots will have a decent place to live in. I think because of the high rental levels and because of the decreasing size of the subdivided units, PRH is the only answer. So I think it is necessary for the government to build more PRH units. If you say that there is a lack of land, then what about the golf course? What about the URA sites? And then just now, many deputations have also referred to civil service or civil service quarters. I think they can be made use of. Many citizens want to live in the urban area because they have to go to work. So we still have got many sites in the urban area, and they should be turned into PRH sites. Now the HHD, the government, your time is up. Next, Shaoqiwan Housing Unit, Miss Ning. Are you here? Please move your cart sideways, otherwise I can't see you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been waiting for PRH units for 6 years. I'm a victim of the policy. June last year, I was interviewed, but I haven't heard anything since then. Currently, I live in a subdivided unit. It is very small. We are a family of 4. We only squeeze ourselves into 100 square foot space. Every day when I cook, then we have to suffer from the increase in the air temperature. It is almost 40 degrees Celsius. I just can't take it. You may say that why don't you turn on the aircon? But then the electricity bill would be beyond my reach. We have to pay $1.50 per unit. I think usually just pay $1 or less than $1 for 1 unit, but for the subdivided unit tenants, it's more expensive, and then the rental itself is also very expensive. The utilities cost us a lot, so how can we afford it? I've been waiting for a PRH unit for 6 years. For citizens like me, Well, we have been on the waiting list for a long time. We have been interviewed, but we have never been given an offer. And we haven't heard any news at all. Can you not follow up on our case? For people like us who have been waiting for a long time, please be more understanding. Please look into our case. We are the lowest strata, and yet you have a lot of land. Say, for example, the golf course. I'm sure you can house a lot of people there. Why can't you follow up on the suggestion? Why can't you deal with the problem? Many units are vacant. Why don't you use them to house those still living in subdivided units and who have been waiting for a long time? Give it to us as a temporary housing. And what about rent control? The rentals have been increased drastically. We don't know when we'll be allocated a flat, and we're unsure as to whether we should sign a tenancy agreement with our landlord, because the tenancy agreement would last for a year minimum. I think the rentals have been increased in such a way that it is beyond my reach. So please understand our plight. That's all I want to say. Next, Ms. Chen Han Chang, Alliance for Grassroots Housing. Now, housing is our basic right. For the policy paper from the administration for this meeting, it is said that public housing is for the low-income families who can't afford a home in the private sector. For a long period of time, there is a shortage of supply. I think the government is trying to divide the society. We have got low-income families, we have got the young, we have got the singletons. Now, for the THB, I don't know whether the THB is trying to rig the figures and try to divide the society, thinking that in this way they can solve the problem. Secondly, again, in this background paper from the Secretariat, if you have got the paper with you, please turn to paragraph 4B. We are quite doubtful about the figures there. Among the 106,100 general applicants, about 15% had waited for 3 years or above. In other words, 90,180 must have been allocated a unit, that is the 85% of them. But then in those 3 years, only 48,000 units have been built. So how come that 48,000 units have been built and yet 90,000 have been given a home? So I think it is a matter of rigging the figures. Like what the DS has said, the DS tried to say that for personal reasons, some applicants have rejected the first offer. What if we all take up the first offer? I think the THB will fail even worse because they just cannot produce enough units for us. It is said that we turned down the first offer. It is because the unit offered is not in the right district for us. We need to find the right district for us. It is very important. The government's policy is to encourage speculation in the property market rather than addressing the basic housing need. I've got a few specific proposals. The MTRCL have 10 stations where there's potential for podium property development. I don't know why we never have PRH units on top of the podium of the MTRCL stations. Now, land has been resumed for public interest, and the government has put in $10 billion, and yet it has never taken up any social responsibility. And then the golf course is as big as Chun Chun. Why can't we have PRH on it? Rent control can solve the problem. So now time is up. Next, Ms. Lau Oi Yuk from Wan Chai. Mr. Chairman, I'm an elderly person. I'm a singleton. I have been living on my own for 5 years. It's a very small unit, a subdivided unit. It used to cost me $2,000. Now it's $4,000. I've been living there for 5 years, and I have never turned on my aircon even once because I don't have money. Every month I can only live on $2,200, and I haven't been given any subsidies. I haven't heard any news about my application. I don't think I can survive. I have gone to a social worker. I've been given a certificate of by a medical doctor. I suffered from cancer, and then it has relapsed once. Now the SWD thinks that I have recovered, but then the doctor has said that there is a high chance that I will have another relapse. I think I should be given a unit. The government has always said that it would like to take care of the elderly, but why is it that someone like me that is in such a miserable state will not be given any help? I think you need to take care of the elderly. I would like to thank you, Chairman, for giving me the chance to speak. Next, Ms. Chen Han from the Concern Group. Have you ever been to Tai Kok Tsui? I think the problem of subdivided units is very serious. We have got subdivided units in old buildings, in the industrial buildings, etc. You just can't imagine how many people are living in the subdivided units. 170,000, really that few? I think many more.
So can PRH units satisfy these 170,000 people? What about those on the waiting list, 240,000 people? Do they not need PRH units as well? Have you imagined how serious a problem is with SDUs? There is concrete falling down, water leakage problem. All these are the problems. And there is rising rental every year after year. So the government hasn't considered the needs of the SDU tenants, and the landlords are raising the rent year after year. And these tenants are in strong demand for PRH units. They have waited for 5, 6, 7 years until the day that they get sick, and they just want a place where they can live. The government says that it doesn't have land to build PRH, but then URA is resuming land year after year. They have major projects going on, but then all these are for building luxury flats. Our flat in Tai Kok Tsui costs as much as $10 million, and that's totally unaffordable by the middle income people. And not to mention the grassroots. So we are selling off Hong Kong people their resources, and I strongly urge that the URA uses its land resumed for building PRH. I think the government departments should also work closely together to build more PRH. Housing department, you said you don't have any land, but then URA is resuming a lot of land, but not to build PRH. Can't you two work together? So much from me. Next, Ms. Lai Yok Wai from Grassroots Housing Group. I would like to say that I have complicated feelings sitting here. We've heard many figures this morning, and I think we should all be very clear about these figures. They are not just presented for the first time this morning. I think the government is so smart in trying to create social divide among us. In the waiting list, there are different categories: elderly, singleton, PWDs, and also general families, compassionate housing, under-occupation houses. What it is in fact doing is trying to create social divide among us. And I've also heard clearly that education resources and housing resources are also mixed up together. So the government is trying to confuse us here. I don't know whether it has to do with our being naive or is a mistake on the government. So, well, coming back to the housing issue, PRH or public housing is not just about the 200,000 people on the waiting list. I wonder whether you know that on your housing department's website, don't you say that you are people or customer-oriented? Who are your customers? Are you really serving the mass public in Hong Kong? Also, I don't want to play around with the figures with the government, but since the government is so smart in doing that, you said that there are some hundreds of thousands of people on the waiting list, and you said that the average waiting time is 3 years, and then people put your focus on the waiting time, 3 years. So I think all these are a game with the figures, and we can't outdo the government in this game. Let's go back to the basic issue, the use of land. Hong Kong still has a lot of land resources. As many people have said, the URA and the MTRCL have resumed a large number of plots every year. Can't we use those for building public housing to deal with the housing problem in Hong Kong? Well, I've only got 30 seconds left. I also want to emphasize that housing is a basic right. And the government officials here, can you imagine how poor the SDU living environment is just as small as a bench here in this meeting room. So please be more understanding towards the needs of the grassroots, the plight of the grassroots. Thank you. Mr. Lai Ka-chun from土瓜灣Housing Group. Thank you, Chairman. Well, all of us here are here to thank you for your promise of a 3-year waiting time. Then Professor Anthony Chang said lightly that you should be psychologically prepared, that you can't get a unit in 3 years. Secretary, where are you? I don't see you here. So who should bear the burden of that mistake? This morning, all of us are here, and we have been under a lot of psychological pressure for a number of years. This is just a very basic need of ours. In the 80s, Hong Kong government encouraged people to speculate on properties, and the land has all been sold off to the property developers who have profiteered, and they got rich. And today we're facing the problem of a land shortage. In 2004, the rent control was disbanded, and rental rose or soared as a result, and people were forced to apply for PRH. And some 240,000 people are on the waiting list, and every year fewer than 20,000 PRH units are made available. So many people are still living in subdivided units. They're sleeping on the streets in container houses. This is a shame on us, Hong Kong, as a very prosperous city. So Hong Kong government, you should not find land by destroying people's homes, but rather you should look at places like the golf course, brownfield sites in Yuen Long, and vacant land, deserted land in Yuen Long. Can we use those for building PRH? Should our land be all given to the rich? Some people have mentioned about the URA, Urban Renewal Authority. They are using public resources and public funds to compensate those affected by the redevelopment projects. Now, with public funds at their hand, shouldn't URA be obliged to do something for those on the waiting list for PRH? And also the MTRCL, the Shatin Central Link, and the Hong Kong Island East, Hong Kong Island South projects, they are resuming land, public land which should originally belong to Hong Kong people. Shouldn't they be building PRH on those sites as a compensation? So I think land justice should be upheld, and the government should build more PRH as a compensatory measure for resuming our land. And also we urge that rent control be reinstated, and also the 3-year waiting time should also be realized. Next is Rihanna.
Minorities living in Hong Kong, we usually have more than 4 household members. We encounter various difficult upon housing issues. The following are our concerns. We have difficult to find private house with affordable price. The rent almost take our monthly salary or half of it. Some men in the ethnic minorities need to work for more than 2 jobs to sustain their daily lives. We recommend the government launch the rent control policy on private house to monitor the increase the rent. Some landlords refuse to rent the flat to ethnic minorities. We worry that the future of renew the contract, and thus we have to move out. We urge the government legislate the racial discrimination. We advise the government to concern the housing needs of large families by providing more large-size flats for the big ethnic minorities families. We demand the government to increase the supply of public housing. We suggest purchasing private housing and opening for public housing so that the applicant to shorten the waiting list. Thanks. Tinka's Harmony.
多謝你。咁而家呢就係請官員呢就係先綜合呢就係剛才嘅團體或者個人代表提出嚟嘅問題，要綜合回應嚇，然後呢就到議員呢係發問。
係希望綜合到啦嚇，或盡量簡短啦嚇。係。咁頭先都有唔同嘅朋友咧，都即係重複講咧，就係話其實政
Different deputations have asked whether the government is creating a social divide. No, definitely not. Whether it's the tower well of tenant policy, under occupation household policy, we're trying to make the best use of public housing resources. We will provide PRH to those in most need. Inevitably, we have to set priorities. So today, we are giving priority to families. So that's why non-elderly singletons, we're implementing a QPS. And for well-off tenants and under-occupation households, the same principle applies. For those tenants who have become more well-off, should we not be thinking of really giving priority to those who are in real need on the waiting list? This is what has been requested by the Director of Audit, also the electrical, i.e. how we should be making the best use of housing resources. Well, a couple of weeks there was a similar discussion on occupation households. I don't want to repeat our points here. So we are trying to be rational and reasonable in our approach. And one important principle is whether we are trying to shuffle around the different units. Because we still have to find a unit for the under-occupation household. And what is important is we try to allocate more flats to 4P or 5P households because we are in lack of such large size units. In the next few years, we'll be providing more 1 or 2 bedroom households flats. So recovery of flats is an important source of a larger size flats. So we're not trying to create social divide here. We're just trying to maximize the use of housing resources. Also, we agree that building more PRH is the best solution to the housing problem. In the past couple of years, we've tried very hard to build more PRH. So I would like to urge the public here that when we consult the people on the district level, please give us your support if we can identify a location for building PRH. Now, as far as figures are concerned, we have been very transparent. The figure of 470,000 units have been accepted by the CE, the 60-40 ratio, public housing, private housing. I think this has been mentioned many times. And in the CE policy address, the target is to build 20,000 PRH and 8,000 HOS. We will work towards that very hard. We will work very hard. Now, as for ethnic minority housing needs, well, the family size is relatively larger. We understand that. Now, for AP households, we will try to be as flexible as possible. We will try to arrange or provide 2 units to them. So there is a pressing need to recover larger sized flats, and I think that can help them. Many deputations have also asked why URA cannot build PRH on the land resumed by them. I can't speak on behalf of URA, but then URA's objective is really to is on urban renewal. So their policy objective is somewhat different from the HA's, and they have to be self-sustainable on a financial basis. So what we should do is to try to get as much land as we can to build PRH. So that's my reply. DS, can you also supplement and explain a bit on several issues? First is about district allocation. The last time we said that the 4 districts were too broad. Can we further subdivide the 4 districts into more districts? Because that would make it hard for people to make their selection of districts. Can you consider that again? Second issue. Many deputations have raised the concern on why vacant civil servants' quarters can't be used as interim housing. Can you elaborate and explain on that? Thank you, Chairman. There are 4 districts, major districts. We used to have many more districts in the past, but then if you further divide the districts into many more districts, then the distribution will not be even, i.e., there will not be a similar number of units in every district made available. The applicant, well, there are cases where the applicant says that I must have a unit in Shamshipo and I won't choose other districts. So inevitably, such applicant has to be waiting for longer. So the further the division of the districts, the longer possibly maybe the waiting time. We used to have many more districts in the past. Why we go back to 4 major districts? We want more flexibility. And also public transport has been more convenient these days. So if you have 4 major districts, there will be more flexibility. So as for the civil servants' quarters, I don't have information on hand. To my understanding, I think the government has already been considering whatever land is available, including the vacant civil servants' quarters. Well, some of them may have already been earmarked for other uses, just that such uses have not been announced. But I don't have the information on hand today, so I can't really be very specific in my answer. Can you also supplement on the deputation's remarks? He said that he has been given a number of such and such, and then there is another figure on the website. So can you be more transparent in your statistics so that the applicant will know very well how much longer he has to wait? Perhaps I'll defer to my colleague to take that question. Mrs. Ho? Thank you, Chairman. The applicant has got its own number, but there may be a difference between that and the number as announced in our website. The reason is that we will regularly update such information on our website. And for some applicants, they may not accept the first flat offer, and then subsequently, for some other applicants may have accepted their first offer, so their number may go up than the other applicant. So there may be a difference because of this. So that may be the cause of that, because of this sort of window period or gap. And also for such numbers, we should look at the range rather than a finite number. We will not specify a number, say G, so and so and so. Rather, we will give a range instead. So we will give a certain range, say G, so and so and so. And for an applicant allocated a certain number, he will find it strange that a range is given. And it's because that some applicants may have a higher allocation number because he has accepted the first flat offer. So with regard to the allocation number, there is indeed a range. And he may not understand what the range means to him, when exactly he will be allocated a flat. So is there any measure to help the applicants? If an applicant wishes to make inquiry with his waiting time, he can be given some information, how much longer he has to wait. Is there any measure to help them? Because, well, they won't be able to tell their waiting time from the number, the allocation number. Thank you, Chairman, for your question. Of course, the applicant can call our colleagues directly to understand their situation. But then our colleague may find it hard to tell him exactly for how long he has to wait, because we will have to look at the number of flats that can be allocated, and also among the different queues. The applicants may switch among these different queues. And if they switch from one queue to another, the allocation number or the priority may go up. So if we tell an applicant a specific waiting time, then he will be misled to believe that somebody has jumped the queue, and that's not good. Well, we can tell him his waiting time as compared to the one who has been allocated a flat.
We have several members who are waiting to ask questions. First, Mr. James Toh. Yes, I've heard the deputation's opinions, and I would like to ask this. The deputations say that for more convenient locations, for example, the superstructures of MTR stations, the government would not build PLH on them. Lately, I've heard a radio program, and a former planning department officer said that, well, from the planning's perspective, of course, they cannot decide on everything, and he cannot decide for other government departments. But he said that from the planning perspective, they think that for this MTR station superstructures, the housing should be a good mix. That is, there should be both private and public housing. He is actually quite a senior officer, but his bosses told him that that is not possible. He must be crazy. And the same person said on another occasion, he said that in Stanley there are many luxury houses. However, there's also a PLH estate. So in the colonial era, there was this kind of housing mix. So is it that because of financial considerations that you do not do this? That is, for places with better view, you will not do this, like Homantian Hill or the Peak. So for all the HA's better size, they are given back to the government, and the government would use them for luxury flat development. So is this an established policy of the government, or is just the thinking of individual officers? The deputations mentioned this, so I would like to also put this question to you. Ms. Wong, in the past, the HA returned sites to the government, and I remember the secretary also mentioned this and another electrical meeting. That is, this will not happen again. The HA's sites will from now on be used for public housing. Now, in the past, there might have been different considerations. Now the whole market has changed as to whether certain sites should only be used for luxury flats or there should be a housing mix. The Development Bureau has been liaising closely with us. We would look at this from a planning perspective. Certain sites are suitable for private housing and other sites are suitable for public housing. But we are moving towards, we are moving towards the same direction. In 10 years' time, we will be building 470,000 new units, and 60% of them will be public housing. Well, Chairman, you are talking about technical things. A certain site is earmarked for a certain purpose as it is decided by experts. I think there's a value there. We know that. For convenient sites or better locations, they will be used for private housing, and all the public housing are moved to faraway places. So this is a matter of value. I know the HA is not giving the sites back to the government because it's very difficult to find PLH sites, and it's mainly because the residents of the private buildings in the vicinity of the PLH sites objects to the construction of the PLH. So the HA will not do this anymore. And the government, what about new sites that are given to the HA by the government? This is a very bad feeling, and our society is not harmonious. There is a huge wealth gap. It seems that you have this luxury size, and the PLH tenants are kept out of such size. Yes, we've heard your view. Now, from the THB's point of view, we will try to fight for size for housing production. But when we consult the districts, there would definitely be different voices. These are issues that both we and the planning department have to face. Ms. Mamakun, well, just now we were told that for certain sites, the secretary or the deputy secretary cannot decide on. You have talked about 22 PLH estates. How come you still do not have a timetable for redeveloping them? I just talked about Kwai Sing West estates, and there are only 48 households living in one block. So if you demolish these estates and redevelop them, then 10 times the people can move into them. Just now, I said that, well, actually, we met with you many times at Kwai Ching. There are 2 new estates, and you can do some rehousing. And even for the blocks for compassionate rehousing, there will be more than 48 households in one block. So this is something you can do. Why don't you demolish these under-occupied blocks? So why don't you do the easy thing? And instead, you want to create so much trouble for yourself. It is very difficult to redevelop all districts. We have mentioned 22 estates. We will look into them in great detail, but we will have to look at a lot of factors. Now, for when new housing estates are built, we will have to strike a balance. Now, if some of the units are given to rehousing tenants from other estates, then we will have less units. But of course, we will have to calculate. And for redevelopment, it would very often take 10 years or more. So now there are many people on the waiting list, and for redevelopment, we will have to calculate the number of units gained. So we will have to do a lot of calculations. And for the tenants affected, we will have to negotiate with them, and this will also take a very long time, and we will have to use a lot of resources. For example, we will have to hold tenant meetings many times. Yes, we are planning to look at this 22 estates, but it's impossible for us to handle this 22 estates at the same time. And if we decide to redevelop a certain estate, we'll have to give the tenants enough notification. So even if we have decanting resources, we will still have to strike a balance. Thank you, Chairman. Well, the Deputy Secretary thinks that I am very naive. Of course, I'm not saying that you should redevelop the 22 estates in one go. And not every estate has the same problem. I just mentioned an estate with only 48 households in one block. So you can redevelop that estate right away. And if you redevelop that, the new block will accommodate many more people. You don't have to tear down the whole estate. You can demolish the blocks one by one in stages. Well, were you not working for the THB in the past? I would like to tell you this. This has been the government's practice. They would demolish blocks one by one and redevelop the estate in stages. Now, you say that it's difficult, so you are not doing it, then we can never do redevelopment. Oh, you are saying that when you go to the districts, you consult the tenants, they would raise objection. Yes, because in the past, the facilities were not provided adequately. And if you ask people to move to remote places, there's not enough traffic infrastructure. So you should do a better job. And first of all, you should first put together a redevelopment timetable. Now, you can ask your housing department staff, in the past, how did they redevelop old estates? I'm not saying that we will not move in that direction. Redevelopment is also a source of new housing units. But as to which estate we should handle first, there are a lot of problems to be resolved. But if we do not have a timetable for those 22 estates, as for the estates affected, we will definitely inform the tenants as early as possible so that they can be prepared. How about Kwai Sing West Estate? Can you focus on this question? As for the redevelopment of Kwai Sing West Estate, well, I'm not responsible to that, so that I cannot answer this question right away. And some other estate tenants also want their estates to be redeveloped first. Please give us supplementary information afterwards. Now we still have some time left, and I would like to ask you this on behalf of the deputations. Just now, many representatives mentioned singleton applications. They say that the queue is really long. And some deputations said that for young applicants, they felt that, or they feel that they are being discriminated against. So for non-elderly one-person applicants and their long waiting time, what is the policy now, and how do you look at it? Chairman, for the QPS, it started in 2005. We want to rationalize the waiting situation for PLH. Now, the priorities are put on families and elderly applicants. So for non-elderly one-person applicants, the priority is a bit lower. So that's why we have the QPS. It is a very clear system. We look at your age, your time in the line, and whether you are now a PLH tenant. So there are different points. So we are definitely not discriminating against young people. We also believe that for young people, when they are compared with the elderly, it's easier for them to move up the social stairs or the social ladder. And some people even say that they have to wait for over 60 years. Well, for a young person, when he works in the community, we hope that he can make a salary that's higher than the requirements set out for PLH. So we have the QPS, and of course it will be reviewed if there is a need. Some applicants may not meet the eligibility criteria anymore, so maybe they can be removed from the waiting list, and also among them there may be some elders. Maybe we should offer them more help. Well, for the deputations, I think just now Ms. Lam Ho-yong, Ms. Ho talked about their personal cases. But for our meeting, we are to look at policies. So for your own personal cases, after the meeting, please give the relevant information to our clerk so that our clerk can refer your cases to the complaints division of the Legislative Council. And the complaints division will liaise with the HA and the HD with regard to your application. I cannot ask them to answer questions concerning your own personal case here. As for Ms. Ng and Ms. Lam, just now I missed you. Well, but that's the same for you. If it's about your own personal case, please give the information to our clerk, and your case will be referred to LegCo's Complaints Division. So it's about time that we adjourn the meeting. I would like to thank the deputations and the individuals who are attending the meeting, and I would also like to thank the government officials. Thank you.